Hey, Duvid here. Gonna do a rambling of a chess coach today. Had some interesting thoughts. I was watching this guy, Oki, on. He's got these crazy house videos. Later, I'll try to put a link to his channel in the description. So, anyone's been seeing my channel, I've been playing a lot of this crazy house, which is kind of like a one board bug house, where when you take your opponent's piece, you get to place that piece anywhere on the board. So it's like in Bug House where you have two players. No one's playing Bug House right now, but when you play Bug House, you have two teams of two, and one player's white and one player's black. So when you take your opponent's piece, you hand it to your partner, and they could place it anywhere on the board. So they have came up with a game. It's been pretty popular on chess.com and Allied Chess. I've been doing pretty good at it, winning these tournaments, international tournaments. They call it Crazy House, which is like one board bug house. And this guy Oki was doing a history of the game and I guess there's a book that has a chapter on the history of chess variants. And so he was looking at the history of variants where pieces change color. Would it be like a defection? So I've done talks about many times the history of chess and the various forms of how it likely came from India or Iran. I have the book here. Most likely its earliest origins possibly in India and the Vedas. It's mentioned in the Vedas. Krishna plays chess, but also historically, if it was like the Iranians, the original Aryans, where they had the Ora Mazda, the white king was this deity Ormond, and the black king Ahriman, and so possibly the origin of the game is said that likely could have been Chinese ancestor worship, where they used bones, and it was a way of divination of trying to communicate with the ancestors, where it could be the original chess had dice involved, and you had to move the piece related to the die that you rolled. There's an Egyptian variant also like that. And it's possible the original pieces were bones, and they would have been the bones of a person's ancestors. And the reason they would have done that, it would have been some form of divination. So now monotheism or different forms of God. But, the most clear looking for answers is to ask your parents. And when your parents leave the world, you try to get the answers possibly from your ancestors. So maybe in ancient times, people would carry around like the bones. Possibly chanting beans originate from that, like archaeological. I've talked about this before. So silver screen, thanks for tuning in. I have a nice wood chessboard. I just use a generic board. I play mostly on the internet. So just like a symbolic, nice board. I have like a $200 nice wood set. In fact, it's on my table, so when I stream, you can see it in the background. So we're just saying this ancient variation of chess, where it was likely a form of divination, where people would try to use the game to decipher what the gods wanted in victory, where the pieces represented certain deities. So in the ancient Aryan game, it's likely like the king represented spirit, the queen represented mind, the bishop emotions, the knights vitality, the rooks the physical body, and the pawns the 8 faculties of the soul, which could be related to seasons, impulses, perception, and white could be the self in the vehicle, and black could be the non-self, false ego. King side be positive, negative. So different spiritual interpretations that are brought down to understand what the pieces represented, or if they were specific deities. And so there's certainly ancient variants of the game where the pieces represented certain things, and it was a form of divination to determine the will of the gods, so to say, or the will of the ancestors. And then the history of how it develops. The game was likely brought from the East to Europe through the Muslims, and the Muslims were against idols of any form. So any form that the chess pieces had were stripped away by the Muslims, and then eventually in the rise of Europe. Um, yeah, so eventually you have the rise of chess in Europe, and it retakes the form of the Christian feudal system with the king, queen, bishop, knight, rook, with the cross on the king. So you're returning to its idol origins, where the game originally. The Muslims who had stripped the game of any idols, and then when it enters Europe, the game retakes the form of idols, but in the form of Christianity and the feudal system. You say it's a militaristic game, but generally it's like a family game, because if the games historically were more military pieces, now you have the king and queen, so the feudal system. So I was thinking about this crazy house variant, where what's to say that a piece is always going to be on the same side? Whatever white and black represent, generally the piece always remains the same. So they say in shogi in like the 1600s is the first origins of pieces switching sides, which could be related to defection, or I was thinking reincarnation. There's some theories of reincarnation where, like, if you kill someone in battle, they're reincarnated as sometimes they say you're a slave. Like in ancient times, there were theories of reincarnation where you kill someone in battle, that they're reincarnated as your slave. And so in ancient Roman times, that was one of the thoughts, that when someone dies in battle, they could be reincarnated as your slave. So you think like the crazy house, it's just a given that when you capture a piece, it automatically becomes your piece of the exact same value. So if that would, somehow represent some sort of reincarnation. So, like I captured your piece, as opposed to just going to the side and having no use for the rest of the battle, it gets immediately reincarnated on my side. So I thought that was an interesting interpretation. Possibly Bughouse would have an interpretation like that also. So I wanted to mention that. And I had the Sukkah holiday this week. I played a lot of chess and I streamed it. After Sukkah, I want to get back to my research and work, so I probably won't be streaming as much chess. Ally Chess had stronger competition, so I've been finishing almost towards the top, first place, or near the top in all the chess.com tournaments for a few weeks now. I've only been playing Crazy House a few months, so yeah, I played Bughouse when I was younger, and Bughouse is a great game. The coaches sometimes don't like the kids playing Bughouse, but the stronger players like Bughouse. It's a good way to encourage communication and thought. Are they playing Bughouse here? Yeah, so here's some of our better players, and they're playing Bughouse. So you see the basic form where you have two partners of two teams, one black and one white, and when you capture a piece, you hand it to your partner and they can place it anywhere on the board. And so Crazy House is just the variant where it's just one board, so the piece becomes yours. So that looks like almost checkmate. Not quite checkmate, but he might not even have a mate. He might have turned that pawn into a knight on the end. But so the Bughouse is pretty popular. I encourage the kids to play Bughouse. It's very creative. It's a creative form of chess, and more creative than regular chess. So regular chess, generally you don't win by like crushing attacks and checkmate. Usually you have a small advantage, like you win a pawn or a piece, and then you get into an end game and queen a pawn, or get a small advantage, and you play on all sorts of the board. And so you're not always just playing for checkmate. As opposed to Bughouse, you almost always play for checkmate. You're not necessarily going to like play for like a queen side advantage or try to win a pawn or a positional crush. You're going to go for straight crush, go for mate, and the advantage of having new pieces to place on the board. So you can see in Crazy House, a few pieces could mate. Like you have a knight and a a bishop and usually a queen, but sometimes even just like a knight and a bishop or a pawn that could turn into a queen is enough to have mates. So the games could turn very quickly and they're dynamic. The person could look like they're pretty safe. And so here, you see it's pretty wild. Both kings are in danger, and so you're attacking and defending. Here, there's like sitting. Neither side has much pieces. On the other board, one guy's king is very safe, as where the other is in a lot of danger, and so it's an interesting game. The spiritual implications of saying the concept of, let's say, defection and switching sides is just a given. So maybe like original shogi, you're having an occasional ability for a person to switch sides or defect, which according to the classical game, there is no defection, there is no switching sides. That's just yeah, Silver Scream, like gaming is one of the most popular form of streaming. So I play games like I worked at all the Kingsmen chess and brain games supplies, and it's pretty good stuff. Like I encourage any form of games, and I'm a very mathematical person, and I'll talk with like kids and different tricks to do multiplication in your head and stuff. And although chess is really the only game I play, I'm pretty good at backgammon also. But chess variants are really the only games I play. Although any game could be a good mental exercise for improving your mental ability, but that's my game. But yeah, I encourage you to stream. You could stream crossword puzzles or anything. I don't know about web pages. Chess.com has over 30 million users and will have over 100,000 people playing games at any time. And I'm sure they have crossword puzzles, but yeah, I encourage you to do that for your streaming. Streaming is a good way. So I've been advancing. I had Gandalf on, and we were talking about group selection strategy, group evolution, and I'm advancing these ideas related to free will, boundary conditions on free will, and possibly like group selection strategy is a boundary condition upon free will, that something's developed over generations and can't simply be changed by a person. You can't recognize of pressures over tens of generations. It makes it very difficult to quite a boundary on a person's free will to just act differently. So you might recognize a certain aspect that a person has quite a few options in their behavior, but there's a natural inclination to behave in the same way our ancestors did, and that could take quite a bit of time to change. So I wanted to give that ramble. The Jewish holidays, Monday night will be Simchas Torah. Looking forward to that. And I hope people caught my streams on Crazyhouse, and I'm glad LHS had the computer analysis. These days for playing chess, you need computer analysis. Anyone know my friend Ray here locally? He's a Detroit Hebrew, got in the synagogue. Unfortunately, he had a stroke, and so you pray for Ray's health. Hopefully, he'll return to full health. So, we get some good Bughouse, stronger players. Everyone likes Bughouse, but you get the stronger players are, it's more fun, it's more creative, it's more communicative, and past a certain level of chess, the patterns, the training of the patterns for getting to a certain level of chess, maybe like 12, 1500, is very useful for educational purposes. But then when you get to a higher level, it becomes much more levels of pure memorization and somewhat unuseful patterns. So, how good do you really want to be at chess? How much are you going to work at it? And, so that reaches a level where, I think, unfortunately, the girl Charisse, who was playing in India, didn't do so well. And I mean, it's very tough competition at the international tournament. But telling, just wanting to win, just wanting to be the best, doesn't really help you win chess tournaments. It's really understanding these patterns and the spatial reasoning and pattern recognition that makes for a good chess player. So just the pure desire to win, only if that drives a person to work harder, but generally it's just a desire to understand how these patterns and spatial patterns work for a person to spend time. I saw Olaf, movement critic, had mentioned on one of these videos, something related to that. And there's the theory of mastery, and there's been studies on chess players and musicians and mathematicians or any field, and they give a heuristic of about 10,000 hours of effort for mastery. So if you think 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 50 weeks a year is 2,000 hours. So 5 years of basically full time of something for mastery. So if you want to master something, you're looking at 5 years full time of doing that. So let's say Duvid has mastered chess, Duvid has mastered Talmud, maybe Duvid has mastered engineering. And as a middle-aged man, 41 years old, that there's multiple things that I've been able to master that 10,000 hour limit, where you could ask me mathematics, calculus, engineering, and I could whip out a pencil and paper and solve calculus problems, or chess, or Talmud, or Judaism. And these are various things that I've put over 10,000 hours of time into. Like playing an instrument, I maybe put hundreds of hours. Now playing the drums, I go to Indian temple, and I play the drum pretty regularly. That's still probably only hundreds of hours I spent playing the drums, percussion instrument, for a mastery level. I probably won't have the amount of time to due to that commitment. But for a mental process, looking at IQ, so to say, given ability, and we're talking on the stream with Gandalf about what could you decipher just off a person's chess ability. What's the most useful piece of information? If you could only know one piece or a handful of information about a person, what would be useful to know? And I said, I've been saying probably the amount of money they have. For a kid or something, obviously they're not likely to have that much money. But even for a kid, saying their parents' economic status. So it could be the single most important factor would be how much money a person has, then maybe intelligence. But how would you gauge? I'm a chess coach here. Yeah, Ali, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I'm a volunteer chess coach. My mother was the attorney for the museum here. If anyone knows Detroit, you got the Grand Bargain. I've shown this many times in the past. You can look at the past videos where Detroit went bankrupt and owned quite a bit of art, and they were thinking of selling the art in order to pay off the debt that they owed the city. And the foundations raised quite a bit of money. You can see Ford Foundation, $125 million. William Davidson Foundation, if anyone saw Aaron and Mehud, the Davidson Foundation's paying for excavations in Jerusalem. Kresge Foundation, Kellogg Foundation, they're the Seventh-day Adventists from the cereal company. But yeah, my mother was the attorney. So you got major foundations, $366 million to preserve the art of the DIA and to pay for part of a bargain on the retirement funds for the various people who worked in Detroit and had retirement pensions owed to them. So my mother represented the museum in that case, and I'm a chess coach. So I said, I want to do a good deed. I want to be helpful to the community and greater society. And as people could see from my streaming, chess is one of my great skills. So I could have some most impact being a volunteer chess coach, and I've been doing that for many years. So since I started streaming, I've been doing these rambles of a chess coach, kind of like pontifications, kind of like Ghost was saying, everybody pontificates. So I rewatch these later to kind of review my own pontifications and try to have advancements in my thought. And if other people find my pontifications interesting or useful, that's good. If you could just stream and be famous or popular and make money from people listening to your pontifications, but presumably everybody pontificates, and so this is just kind of like I put it like rambling of a madman almost, saying like Duvid's a self-proclaimed madman. He like Trump's a very stable genius, so I don't want to be too self-defecating, call myself a madman. So I'd called some of these streams ramblings of a madman, but call it ramblings of a chess coach. And thank God we have good results. Like here at the state, people are very proud. Kids, win titles and everything. You got that woman, and she could bring her kids down here if she wanted her kids to play chess. This is a great opportunity and venue for people, for kids to take life more seriously, to learn how to think and learn from some of the best. So if you're interested in chess, with all due humility, Duvid's from the best. So that's my volunteer activity, and I've been doing these rambles to try to connect it to my streaming and greater thought and puzzle solving. I had a book here from I went to the Roper School, which Roper was a German man who married Anna Marie Bondi, who was a student of Freud and Germany, and he's a linguistics, and he's got a book on child language acquisition and learning things about humanism. So I've mentioned here on quite a few of these streams that there are universal aspects. There are universal aspects to human nature, and things like language acquisition, thought formation. There might be some cultural differences, but you see, like by a game of chess, everybody basically uses logic, problem solving, and various things the same. These are universal qualities of all humans, and there are certain group selection pressures where like individualism versus collectivism, or the various traits that people study. Aggressiveness, passiveness, testosterone levels that are different among different groups. As they say, the differences among race are greater than the differences between race, where you look at the average difference between the average of the races, that's less than the differences between the extremities of a given race. But obviously the different groups have quite a bit of differences, but there's certain universal aspects, just like anatomy. All people have the same anatomy. People might have like different levels of things that give people a different eye color, hair color, bone sizes, or various things, but anatomy, physiology, neurology, these things are basically universal. All people have the same functioning. So thought formation, language formation, and various things. So you have to be an educated scholar to know. So if you're a doctor and you're looking at like blood transfusions or kidney transfusions, and you're saying, does it matter the race or the identity of the person? Or if you're looking at a health issue and you say, okay, Jews might get certain disease or have certain genital disorders like Tay-Sachs or Crohn's disease or something, or like sickle cell anemia. But in terms of like sickness, infections, measles, or any of these things, they're basically universal. The anatomy and health and physiology of all humans is largely the same. And that also applies for mental processes, the thought formation, choice formation, life trajectories. And so I'm trying to, Gandalf or other people, to work on some sort of mathematical understanding of free will and boundary conditions upon free will. So we say like, okay, what does a meritocracy mean? Does a meritocracy include the status of your parents? That, say if someone has like a really high IQ child, but their parents are an average family or like economically don't have the resources, a meritocracy allows for some sort of social movement based on merit. But doesn't mean that someone who has more potential that took low birth from someone who has lower potential that took high birth should be able to achieve the same result. So there's obviously boundary conditions upon free will, and taking higher or lower birth. And there's so many different variations of what does it mean, higher or lower birth. So it could IQ, physiology, health, geography, location, socioeconomic status, opportunity, and then there's things that could, like that woman, Amanda, your kids, and you want your kids to do the best, and there's certain boundaries that on your kids' success, like their genetic ability, their IQ, the test score, the schools they go to, um, the association you keep. Let's say you enrolled your kids in the chess program, that could change the boundary conditions on your free will. That could possibly expand the mental capabilities where your kid, may not have been likely to go to an elite college or get very high test results. But if you started them playing chess and took them to a place where they could, learn from the best and be from the best, that might change the boundary conditions. So I talked about that in a previous ramble. You have your nature and nurture boundary conditions. So certainly there's natural inborn boundary conditions, and then there's nurture boundary conditions, and those could change. Like you could take very high birth and sickness or health, war and peace, and various factors will cause these conditions to be bounded. So I've been doing these rambles for quite a bit, but I think relatively soon I'm gonna try to have like a comprehensive understanding, and you say, okay, I've never published anything. I've just done some of these streams, and maybe when I get these ideas put together first, and I'd like to have like for a scientific paper, generally you're required to know the current state of research. So I can't just postulate this is what I think. I have to go over the best minds on the subject, and give kind of like a history. So anyone who watches my own channels, that's what I try to do in my public study sessions, to give the best understanding of the current state of knowledge. Like for my consciousness, solving the hard problem of consciousness, quantum mind, saying this is the current state of knowledge. These are the top researchers. These are the ideas they're putting forward. This is the evidence for and against those theories. And because of my Dualism incorporates so many different things. So I'm talking here about reincarnation. Is okay, Church of Entropy and her supposed scientific proof of reincarnation, and just interpretation of crazyhouse as reincarnation, that like you capture a piece and it gets reincarnated on your side. So if they're still playing bug house here, and go back over and saying interpreting this as a form of reincarnation. So you're saying, okay, one guy captured a piece and it gets reincarnated on a different board in a different battle instantly. So I mean, if you're interpreting what does it mean to happen, so like in a regular game of chess, when you capture a piece, it gets put on the sidelines and then it's done till the game is over, as opposed to bug house. Like he captured a piece and it immediately could be reincarnated in a battle in a different front. So it's just an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, I saw that Red Ice getting banned. I don't know too much about it. Like, I mean, you just want my analysis on the situation. Like, my opinion on the matter doesn't matter. I thought at one point I might even get interviewed on them, go on their show. I still might if they invited me to talk about different issues. Frame Games was there, Adam Green. I've spoken to a lot of people that have been on their show, and I watch it maybe like 10% of their shows. I'll check their channel every week or so, and if they talk about something interesting, because they're covering news or subjects that aren't covered on all the different channels. So got our students from Ben Carson Academy. We're proud to work with kids from Ben Carson Academy. As I told you, their uniform includes scrubs also. They got like a medical nursing program. It's the high school kids, they're like scrubs, part of the uniform from Ben Carson Academy here in Detroit. So likely the crackdown is going to continue. Just if you're just looking at the pressure, like Sheryl Sandberg just gave $2.5 million to the ADL. The ball right now is largely in the Democratic court. The only thing politically happening right now is Democratic, and conservatives don't like to be banned, but there's not enough pressure from conservatives to fight censorship, and there's a substantial amount of pressure on the Democratic side to push for censorship. So I will assume that the censorship is going to continue. You're going to have people calling for, like, how come these guys are allowed to say that? They must be banned. And the voices on the other side saying, what about free speech, are going to be much less loud. And the pressures that be of the people who control the companies are largely pro-censorship. So something is going to have to cause reverse pressure in the other direction to reverse the current state of censorship. It said that there's extreme pressure among the leftists, like the liberal Silicon Valley, Jewish secular elites, to increase censorship, and the conservative voice really have no power in those circles. So, the conservatives that don't like censorship are gonna have to go for some sort of like grassroots movement, and it's gonna take a long time. So it's likely that censorship will just keep on growing until there's some sort of backlash. So I'm missing, because I'm streaming from my phone, these comments only show up for a few seconds. So if people are asking me questions, how do you do this when the time changes? Who drives you do it? Yeah, usually I don't come in the winter. So after daylight savings time, I'll come. Like if you message me and tell me you're going to bring your kids, I'll be here. But usually in the winter, because of Sabbath, I don't come so often. And but if there's a reason to be here, even in the darkest hours, the club starts at 4, and sundown could be like 5:30 at the earliest times here in Detroit. If there's something happening, I'll be here anytime. But after daylight savings time, I'll start leaving earlier. So right now it's a good hour or two till sundown, and yeah. So, hey Ken, is here.
Oh, you good to
Excellent.
see
So so definitely message me. Like if you do, I'm basically here every week. But if you're coming down here, bringing your kids and expecting me to be here, you should reach out beforehand, and we talk, or I'll make sure I'm going to be here. I mean, you don't need me to be here. The club's open to everybody, so you just come and bring your kids and play. But if you want me to, my help or whatever, you should reach out beforehand. So I guess that's the end of my ramble. Thank God. Yeah, I don't know. I would say maybe. I mean, I'm not going to give you marital advice, but saying if your husband's, resting up on Friday, I don't know if you drive. Saying like let your husband relax and get the kids out of the house so we could have peace and quiet, and take your kids to the museum. I mean, if they like chess, if your husband likes your idea of training your kids to chess, I know among Indians, like engineering, mathematics is extremely respected. So I don't know, Arabs and Muslims also have a long history of engineering. Say, like, don't you want your kids to be mathematical thinkers and great engineers and understand logical thinking? And chess has been shown to be one of the greatest ways to get your kids to think algorithmically, logically, and stuff like that. So you might be able to explain to your husband like that. Like, don't you want your kids to do well? Don't you want your kids to be a great engineers? Or you're saying Friday's the only time he sees them? I mean, so if he's too tired to come, so you go to activity, give us some culture. We have an Arab Muslim section here in the museum. We have artifacts. I've shown it on previous streams. Some of the Arab section, we have artifacts donated from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and we got Egyptian mummies and stuff here. So you could have a whole family outing, come to the museum. There's a concert at 7. But whatever, you don't have to. It's you're saying that's if you're in Dearborn, you pay for this. If you own a house and you're in Dearborn, part of your millage goes to pay for the museum being open on Fridays. So there's no cost to come on Fridays. So if you own a house and you're paying a millage, you're paying for Duvid's activity right now. Okay, so I think I'm going to close my ramble and hopefully we'll start back with the week in review of Church of Entropy, not this Sunday because I got the Jewish holidays, but the one after, and moving forward on a lot of different thoughts. And I'm sorry, these on my phone, these chats only show up for like a few seconds. No, there's no ping pong here at the museum. Chess, say because chess is symbolic and related to art. A lot of the famous Michel Duchamp and Salvador Dali and all that. Chess was very popular among artists, and it's representational, it's spatial. So it's not this is the Detroit Institute of Arts, not an activity center, but for whatever reason, chess is one of the activities that is hosted at the museum. And I've rambled about that in the past, the connection. So thank you. I got a whole minion here. 10 people. Happy Sukkah. Happy Sabbath. It's a shame to end the stream with a whole minion watching. But even the rambling of a madman Duvid has to come to an end. So God bless. Take care, everyone. And Shabbat Shalom. Look forward to the next stream.